Hi everyone. So we have some more footage of our garden hedgehogs. You can see from the timestamp this was from the 20th of August, almost 10 at night, and we have a new little friend. So this hedgehog is not Hogrietta or Hedgehog. This is a different hedgehog that we have showing up in the garden. Now you can see from this footage that they are struggling a little bit and they have a bit of a limp. They can still get around, they're managing to eat and drink, and they are obviously an adult hedgehog. They look to be in okay condition, but they do have a limp. When I reviewed this footage and zoomed in a little bit, you can see here that they do have a leg. Their right leg is there, but they are missing their right front foot. So this little hedgehog is missing a foot. It's not clear when that happened. They seem to be managing okay. I have nicknamed them Trihog because of course I have. And Trihog has a little bit more of a story. This was the first time I saw them, and I did send this footage to the Hedgehog Rescue. So there's more to the story of Trihog, which I will probably talk about in a separate dedicated video, but this was the first time that I saw them. So as before, this is recorded with my night vision webcam that I've put outside, which is why the resolution is not wonderful. It is motion sensitive, so the camera does move occasionally when it picks up things like moths or so on flying past the camera. But usually what happens is the app will ping me that it's detected motion, and then I open the app and check in, and if we have hog sign, then I start recording. One of the nice things you can see in these videos as well is you can see the eye shine on the hedgehogs. So hedgehogs, being nocturnal, have something called a tapetum lucidum. That's a reflective area at the back of the eye that reflects light and lets them pick up extra light in low light conditions, or rather make better use of the ambient light in low light conditions so that they can see. Now, hedgehog vision is not brilliant. It's not as good as, something like cats, for example, but they can see pretty well. They rely a lot on their sense of smell and hearing and touch. And they're insectivores. So this little buddy will be usually out hunting for slugs and snails and other insects and invertebrates. But of course, they're perfectly happy to make use of any food that I'm putting out for them. These are the hedgehog pellets that we buy from the Hedgehog Rescue. So this is excellent food for them. It's also dry, which means that it doesn't then attract flies or rot in the hot weather that we're having here. So it stays nice and fresh for them. But I do also put out lots of water. They have 2 large water bowls because of course it's dry food, but also we're having quite a lot of hot, dry weeks here in the south of England. So dehydration is a real risk for these little critters, and putting water out is always a good idea. So you can see little Trihog limping slightly, but you can also see that they are very capable of getting around, and they seem to be managing quite well. So this means that we now have 3 distinctly identifiable hedgehogs that are coming to the garden. We, of course, have Hedgehog, we have Hogrietta, and we now have little Trihog. I say little. Trihog is a perfectly average size adult hedgehog. And you can see they're managing to eat and drink just fine. So these are, of course, European hedgehogs, with us being here in the south of England. And here we have Hogrietta joining us. So you can see that Hogrietta and Trihog are about the same size. And they are perfectly happy to just ignore each other. I spoke with the Hedgehog Rescue a little bit about their behaviour and things like territory and so on. And I have been informed that hedgehogs don't really have a territory per se. So they will just bed down for the day wherever they happen to be, usually in some little secluded spot, like under some bushes or some shrubbery, or of course in hedges, hence the name. But they don't appear to have a single bed that they return to every night. They don't really have a den. And whilst they do have areas like gardens that they will visit regularly, especially if they know they're a good source of food, they don't appear to have really stable territories. So hence why Hogrietta and Trihog are perfectly happy to just potter around, eat and drink, and mostly just ignore each other. Except, of course, Hedgehog, who has just entered from the left of the screen there. Hedgehog does this. Now, I've shown this footage to my friend who rescues hedgehogs and spoke a little to the Hedgehog Rescue people. This apparently is quite unusual behaviour. This is not typical for hedgehogs. The way that Hogrietta and Trihog were behaving is more typical. Hedgehog is apparently quite an unusually, I don't want to say aggressive because they're not attacking the other two hedgehogs. They seem to just be wanting to shove them out of the way. But this is pretty unusual apparently, so we have some interesting garden drama happening with our three visitors. You can see that Hogrietta over there is none the worse for wear and just unrolls and resumes what they were doing. But this happens a few times over the course of this footage, so I was curious as to what's going on here. I have noticed, and it's fairly clear on this footage as well as some other footage that I have, Hedgehog is a particularly large hedgehog. And it's not just that they're fat, their head, their length, their height, they are a lot bigger, noticeably so, than Hogrietta and Trihog. So maybe you become an unusually big hedgehog by bullying other hedgehogs. I don't know. But you can see Hogrietta is perfectly unbothered by Trihog, who is currently still rolled up, and doesn't behave in that way at all. My garden is in the middle of a row of gardens. So there is a garden to the right behind that fence, and there's another garden to the left behind another fence and a bit of wall. So Hedgehog has wandered off, I think, to the next door garden. Hedgehogs often do well in these types of urban environments, especially if there's lots of connected gardens, because they can roam around between different gardens, usually by squeezing under the hedges or the fences, and that's where they'll find their food. So slugs, snails, other invertebrates, and insects. So they'll tend to return to gardens regularly where they are able to find food and able to find resources, but apparently don't actually actively guard those spaces unless apparently you're Hedgehog. But I do think this is resource guarding behavior. They're not attacking the other two, they're not harming them. They just seem to want to shove them out of the way of the food and water so that they can monopolize those resources. I've also noticed that Hedgehog appears to hold themselves up off the ground more than Hogrietta and Trihog do. They seem to be walking up on their little tippy toes and holding themselves up off the ground more. I've no idea if there's a reason for that. I did ask if maybe Hedgehog might be female and maybe they're pregnant and that's why they're quite so hungry and quite so food aggressive. And maybe that's also why they're holding themselves up off the ground. But unfortunately, you can't really tell just by looking, so it's very hard to say. But if you have any thoughts as to what's going on here, is Hedgehog just a bully? Is Hedgehog a very ravenous mama-to-be? Who knows? But they are certainly very, very keen to monopolize as much of the food and water as possible. The other two seem to know this, however, and just seem to wait them out. So they just kind of curl up and wait for Hedgehog to finish eating and drinking and move away, and then they just unroll and get on with what they were doing, really. You can see a little Hogrietta rolled up there, which is very cute. That's, of course, standard hedgehog defense mechanism. They will tend to run away. If they can't run away, they will roll up. And those prickles are very sharp. They're very short, but they have lots of them. They are very sharp, very uncomfortable, and do an excellent job of deterring things like cats, dogs, etc. I think Hogrietta is about to unroll. You can see she's moving around a little bit there. Oh yes, there we go. The camera is motion sensitive, so it does move around a little bit when it picks up motion. I love watching these three. It's very nice to have a garden that wildlife do actually come to and use. So I'm really enjoying watching these hedgehogs, filming them, putting food and water out for them, seeing how they're doing. And also things like this, seeing their behavior and how they interact is absolutely fascinating. Oh, it looks like little Trihog has unrolled as well on the right there. So I don't know over time if Hedgehog will end out deterring the other two. I hope not. They don't seem too put out by Hedgehog or their behaviour. I'm guessing that there's enough food and water because I put so much out to make it worthwhile putting up with them, I suppose. Oh my goodness. Poor Hogrietta. So I can only assume that this is some kind of resource guarding, maybe some kind of dominance behavior, but from what I've been told, they don't seem to maintain a territory, so it wouldn't be territoriality, I wouldn't think. I have also noticed that Hedgehog eats a lot. So I've cut this video, the footage here, in a couple of places because there were just long periods of time of Hedgehog just eating, which does make me wonder if they might be brewing some little hoglets in there, but who knows? So I hope you find this fun and interesting. I will update this as often as possible when I get footage.